And just moments ago, 16-year-old Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg arrived in New York at a marina in Lower Manhattan after a 2-week journey sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. Thunberg stepped off the emissions-free racing yacht that brought her in and a few minutes later held a press conference saying the ground is still shaking for me. Xiye, a young climate activist in New York, made this report as Thunberg's boat appeared in the harbor.
Right now, I am downtown waiting for Greta Thunberg to come in. We are seeing the boat on the water, and we are just waiting for her to come so we can receive her for her press conference.
And can you tell me what's the importance of her trip across the Atlantic in a sailboat?
Her trip across the Atlantic on a sailboat is very symbolic because it shows that she really cares and she wants to bring awareness. And we are in a world right now that is burning and our glaciers are melting. But we're in a world that requires a 16-year-old to cross the Atlantic for our consciousness to be active and for us to know what's going on and take action on it.
Now, some have said that she showed some privilege in taking this sailboat, that the average person couldn't take a sailboat. What do you say to those kind of allegations?
The UN is helping her, and there are 17 United Nations boats here representing the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And this is a global effort that we all need to be part of, and we need to support her in any way we need because we are representing the future, and we are asking you to care about us.
What are they cheering?
Yes, they're cheering because she's coming in right now.
How does the boat look? Describe the scene there right now. Where are you?
There is Greta coming in, and there's 17 other sailboats from the UN. And here we have a lot of reporters, and we have a lot of student strikers who are here to receive her.
And what's going to happen after you meet? What's next?
We are going to have a press conference, so it's going to be Greta Thunberg, Alexandra Villaseñor, and me, Xiye Bastida. We're going to be on the stage, and we're going to have a 20-minute press conference with questions and answers.
And what after that? What's next as far as the movement and her role in the movement?
This Friday, actually, she's going to strike at the UN. This is going to be her first strike in the U.S., and we are going to be in front of the UN striking. After that, we are building up for the September 20th climate strike, which is going to be an international global strike, and it's going to be intergenerational because we are asking adults to join us.
Why do you call it a strike?
Striking as a verb to disrupt your daily life, to make a point, and to whoever is above you. This is something that needs to be addressed. And this is an emergency, so that's why we're doing it.
I see. And what would you like the adults of the world to learn from this strike, from this action, from what Greta's doing right now?
I want adults to realize what the youth are going through. The youth are going through a world that is, burning and melting. And we want you to realize what that means to us. It means that we won't have a livable future. So we want you to process that information and become a climate activist. Strike with us. Come out on the street and make your voice count.
Moments later, Greta Thunberg stepped ashore and held a news conference in Battery Park.
The climate and ecological crisis is a global crisis and the biggest crisis humanity has ever faced. And if we don't manage to work together, to cooperate, and to work together despite our differences, then we will fail. So we need to stand together and support each other and to take action, because otherwise it might be too late. So let's not wait any longer. Let's do it now. Yes.
Do you want to get questions? Okay, so we've got time for some questions. So if you could state who your question's for, and we will start.
Even on a sailboat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, I heard about the forest in the Amazon rainforest, the fires in the Amazon rainforest. So that's, yeah, and it is, of course, it's devastating, and it's so horrible. It's hard to imagine. This is a clear sign that we need to stop destroying nature, and our war against nature must end. and the Amazon is such a key to addressing the climate crisis and the ecological crisis, so that is incredibly important. We cannot understand how important it is. So
Lady at the back here. Yeah.
everyone always asks me about Donald Trump. But I mean, my message for him is just listen to the science, and he obviously doesn't do that. So I mean, as I always say to this question, if no one has been able to convince him about the climate crisis, the urgency, then why should I be able to do that? So I'm just going to now focus on spreading awareness, and that people in general will start caring and realize how big of a crisis this is. Yeah. It's a huge focus on me as an individual, and maybe in a way that takes away from the focus from the actual problem. And so, of course, I wished this was more not focused on me, but more as a whole. And but I mean, there's not much I can do about that. If what I'm doing can make a difference, and if it can create attention for the climate crisis, then I'm going to use that opportunity to try to change things.
Sorry, lady down here in the blue shirt. Sorry, yeah.
I'm going to relax for some days now, and I won't really celebrate this trip or anything. I will just be as normal, because that is what I enjoy the most, to not do anything and to go for walks and eat fresh food, not freeze dried, and to be dry and to clean myself. I was how old I were when I first started to become a climate activist, or I first found out about this issue when I was maybe 7, 8, or 9 years old, and then I realized that, oh, this is actually very bad, and I started to read about it more and more, and when I became maybe 11, I became depressed, and the climate crisis was a huge cause of that. And because I just felt that everything is hopeless, and there's nothing we can do, and no one is doing anything. But then I sort of got out of that depression by promising myself that I'm going to do everything I can to change things, and that is what I tried to do. And I started to go to marches and demonstrations and to join organizations and things like that. But I still thought things were too slow, that nothing was really changing. So I was desperate in a way, tried to do something, just anything. And then this idea of school striking came up, and then I thought, yeah, I might just as well try that and see if it works, and if it doesn't, then I will try something else. And then I did it, and then it became huge very quickly. What I say to all leaders is that we have to take responsibility and see the bigger picture, and of course different countries have different different ways, or they are depending on different things, and and that of course we need to take into account that, and of course the aspect of equity, which is stated throughout the Paris Agreement. We also need to take into account that different countries are on different developing levels, and we need to make sure that everyone gets a just transition.
Thunberg says she didn't feel seasick once during the trip, despite rough weather that delayed her arrival one day. She's in the U.S. for the United Nations Climate Action Summit and says she sailed to avoid the greenhouse gas emissions that come with flying on a commercial jet. And you're listening to the news on listener-sponsored WBAI Pacifica Radio in New York. I'm Paul DiRienzo. And in climate news, a special event in New York City hosted by Intercept senior correspondent Naomi Klein, author of the forthcoming book On Fire, The Burning Case for a Green New Deal, and headlined by trailblazing climate activist Greta Thunberg, author of No One is Too Small to Make a Difference, was held Monday night at the New York Society for Ethical Culture. Thunberg arrived in New York after a ride across the Atlantic on a sailboat. She said on board is when she first heard that the Amazon forest was burning.
One of the people on the boat, his wife called on the satellite phone and explained that the Amazon is on fire, and right after that call, he called for everyone else of us and said, like, the Amazon is burning, and that it was serious, and it was just so shocking, and it was so hard to realize, because being on the ocean, you cannot do anything, you cannot impact in any way, you cannot do anything about it, you just have to sit there, and it was horrible to sort of the knowledge of that. And then when I came to shore, it was the first time I could see pictures of it, and to really find out the details about it. And I remember that was one of the first things I did when I came to shore.
Klein asked the youthful climate activist about how she deals with sometimes vicious attacks by right-wing climate change deniers.
I don't know how many laugh attacks I have had just watching these tweets. And sometimes I have like a competition with myself to find the most absurd conspiracy theory.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's sometimes tough because they're also, because they go after like things like my personality and how I am, how I look, how I behave, and I mean that is just a sign that you are winning, and that they don't have any more arguments.
And in a touching moment, Thunberg, who has long posted on her online bio that she has Asperger's syndrome, basically a mild case of autism, described how her diagnosis helped her focus on the climate crisis.
I am different from everyone else, and it is thanks to my diagnosis, my Asperger's syndrome, and because without that I wouldn't have noticed this crisis. I remember because everyone else, they saw the same thing, they saw the same pictures and films as I did, the destruction of nature and what was happening with the climate, but no one of them seemed to really, I didn't understand why their lives wasn't turned upside down like mine was. And that in the fight against the climate crisis, there are a lot of people who are on the autism spectrum, and that is, of course, that cannot just be a coincidence. I think it has something to do with as we we walk the walk, and we don't have the distance from what we know and what we say to what we do and how we act is not that far, but to normal people it is. They cognitive dissonance, and I can't, for example, understand that someone can say like, yeah, climate change is very important, and then not do anything about it. Because if you know how important it is, then you know that you also have to do something, that you also have a responsibility to do something.
Greta Thunberg was in New York. She was speaking last night at the Society for Ethical Culture. And thousands of young people packed Foley Square in Manhattan. Chambers Street and parts of Center Street surrounding the square were shut down, and police closed off the exit from the Brooklyn Bridge. Teenagers hoisted handmade signs packed into subways and buses and stretched all the way across city bridges towards Foley Square before winding their way down to Battery Park to hear speakers, including 16-year-old climate activist Greta Thunberg, whose weekly school walkouts inspired Friday's protests. Among other activists scheduled to address the crowd are various teenage activists, including Artemisia Zachariaba, an indigenous Amazonian youth leader, and Marisol Rivera, a 13-year-old Hurricane Sandy survivor. Special performances by rapper Jaden Smith and his songstress and actress sister Willow. Jaden is the creator of the environmentally friendly Just Water, which packages water in carton boxes. The march was diverse as well as large. A woman with a group of nurses who joined in solidarity had this to say.
Participating in are you here to join the march?
Oh, we have to. I don't think we have an option. We have to leave a planet for our children. And it's so impressive to see all the young, not just young people, but the generations present today. So solidarity is important, especially in light of the fact that we have a president who is in denial of climate change. So I'm here to join the march, to protest, with my brothers and sisters and friends and the young people to make sure that there is a planet. So we have to vote, and I'm going to say something that may be outrageous, but let's get real. We have to vote somebody who will address these issues.
What's your group?
United University Professions.
Since the New York City Department of Education gave an amnesty to students who cut class to come to today's rally, there were many young people in attendance. One group of elementary school children understood the issue perfectly well.
It says there is no other Earth.
What does it mean, there's no other Earth?
It means if we destroy this one, we won't have another one.
Is that why you're here today?
Yes.
Why did you come here today?
So that we could stop climate change.
All right, how old are you?
10.
What grade are you in?
I'm in 5th grade.
Here in New York?
Yep.
All right, great. Hi. What does your sign say?
Keep the world beautiful.
Why?
Because without the world, nothing would survive.
What's your name?
Amaya.
How old are you, Amaya?
6.
You want to talk? Why are you here today?
Because I don't like climate change.
Why not?
Because it destroys more towns with all the floods.
What's your name?
Theo.
How old are you?
5.5.
What's your sign say?
It says, save our future.
Why do you have a sign that says save our future?
Because if climate change keeps happening, the future of our Earth is going to be bad. Dashel.
How old are you?
8.
Among the marchers were Brazilians protesting what they say is a fascist regime of President Jair Bolsonaro, the Trump of the tropics.
It represents a boycott movement against Bolsonaro's Brazil. So,
what's going on in Brazil with Bolsonaro?
Bolsonaro is a far-right president, and with the far-right, he only works for 0.01% of the people. and these people is burning the forest. He's like deregulating pesticide legislation. Since January, we have 325 new pesticides. So if you buy Brazilian food, you buy poison. It's like the institutions that were not ready to authorize these pesticides. They are authorizing new pesticides without studying it. And the Amazon fires are man-made fires. It's made by the farmers supporting our Bolsonaro environmental policies, which will destroy the Amazon. And what the Amazon represents, our future. The Amazon represents our future. You destroy the forest, you are playing with the future of the whole earth. So today we are here doing the climate strike, and we should all stand for Amazon. And that means boycott the agribusiness in Brazil.
What are some of those products we can boycott?
So soybean and meat and the Brazilian beef. This is the main. If we can boycott these two main products, that will change everything that is happening in Brazil in the Bolsonaro's environmental policy.
What kind of person is Bolsonaro?
From the point of view of someone who cares about the people, about social justice, he is like the worst that has ever happened to Brazil, or he represents the worst in the world. He just represents himself and his own family and nothing more.
Are there a lot of protests going on in Brazil right now?
There are a lot of protests going on in Brazil too. This government does not have the support of the people. It got only elected because of fake news. It was an electoral fraud, like what happened here in the United States and other countries. It does not have the support of its own people. Yeah.
Is he like Trump?
It's worse than Trump. That's what we need to really highlight to the world. Is much worse than Trump. Is much worse than Trump. Trump and U.S. has institutions which break a bit Trump. The Brazilian institutions are already very weak. They are not strong enough to break Bolsonaro. And that's why we see in 7 months, we went back maybe 30 years in our history.
Great. What's your name?
Luis Horta. I'm a researcher doing a postdoc in Massachusetts.
And a group of high school students had this to say.
I'm in a chicken suit because the Amazon is getting torched to grow soy, which feeds chickens. And this is really the responsibility of just a handful of major corporations, Cargill, Bunge, Burger King. And actually Cargill, to be honest, it's richer than the Koch brothers. It's the wealthiest privately held company in North America. They can afford to do this right. They don't have to be such fuckers.
Is that involved with the whole burning of the Amazon?
Exactly. They're the ones torching the Amazon to cut down ancient rainforests and grow soy to feed chickens and little pigs. It's
here in the United States, so they ship it here to...
They mostly ship it to Europe and China. But, there's also all these companies that are doing pretty much the same thing, burning the forest in Indonesia for palm oil. And again, you see Cargill as well as other companies. So truly, actually, the meat industry is intimately connected to the soy industry, which is connected to the burning of the Amazon. Etel Igone from Mighty Earth.
And your dress says Earth Riot. What does that mean?
Earth riot, climate riot, here you come, here you come.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's part of a song that talks about how urgent this is, how you got to do something, whatever you can do, but something. You can't just sit there and just watch.
Very good. Thank you. What's your name?
Fran.
Are you guys cutting school today?
Yeah.
Yes? Where do you go to school?
Stuyvesant. Yeah.
Stuyvesant?
I go to Manhattan Center.
Why are you here today? Why did you leave school?
Well, I wanted to go to the march.
What does your sign say?
One side says, our home is on fire and I'm not looking to burn. And
I see what the other side says. That's fine. Why did you come here today? Why are you out here today?
Well, it's something that needs to be addressed. And it was one chance that we got to get out of school, while also, how do I explain it? We're not being penalized for it, and it's just, we can showcase what we want. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah.
What is that you want?
We want climate justice. And
what does that mean to you?
To me, that means that, well, okay, so it's kind of something that the government's been pushing under the rug, just kind of like ignoring, actually not really ignoring, denying completely, saying that it doesn't exist. And that's not good at all, because big corporations and everything, just a lot of people are contributing to climate change and global warming, and it's killing the planet very quickly.
Do you like science, or you have something else you want to do, or what is it?
Science is interesting sometimes, but
What do you want to be?
I'm not too sure yet, but as of now, I'm trying to get into like psychology later on. I'm not sure yet.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Why would you come to this rally here today?
Because climate change it's an important issue that needs to be addressed, but it hasn't been addressed that much and people aren't doing things.
Is that why? So what do you think? You think you're addressing it right now by coming here? Is that why?
I think a lot of people like coming to the march and stuff. It's making a point and like drawing attention to the issue, which is important. Cause
what do you think about the future? You know,
hopefully we'll take better care of the earth in the future, because like it's not looking too great right now.
How about you guys? What do you think about the future?
I think that unless we actually do something, it's in trouble, because there's a lot of problems going on and no one's really addressing it.
And 10-year-old Simon expressed his views.
I believe that our world can change climate change, and I think that we can change everything we've done, but also in a way I feel like that this is unstoppable, and there's so many bad people in this world that create fossil fuels and all things like that, and it's horrible, but people live for that, and they need stuff like that. And there's literally people's jobs it is to cut down trees and like burn forests down for palm oil, to make stuff like Doritos and stuff for PepsiCo. And if we keep this up, in at least 10 years, we're going to screw up. We're screwed. If we don't change everything by then everyone's going to die in like the next 100 years, because climate change goes up by like degrees, and right now I think we're on degrees 1 or 2, and if it gets to like a 4, that's really hot, and like we can't go past that.
And what school did you go to?
PS10.
An activist with the group Rise and Resist is Jaimie Bowers. She was also a marshal during today's climate strike. She says it's time for action.
Today was fabulous. I was marshaling it with a bunch of other Rise and Resist marshals, and it was just great to see all the people out, particularly the teenagers, with their signs and their creativity and their passion. It was really empowering and moving. I didn't see the beginning because I was marshaling. The marshals are there to make sure that everybody gets out safely and doesn't have to deal with counter-protesters. And believe it or not, there were some people counter-protesting.
I saw one guy with a Trump flag. Was there more than that there?
There was the Trump 2020 guy, and then there were a couple of other people who heckled. But it's what you would expect, Wall Street types.
Okay. And so tell us, what is the importance of today? I mean, New York wasn't the only place. I mean, there was stuff in Washington and hundreds of cities around the country. What is the message that you're trying to send?
The message today was that there's a climate emergency, that we have to take action, that we have to unite behind the science, and that although individuals have to make changes in the way they lead their lives, the corporations and businesses also have to make major changes, and we really have to change the way we live our lives.
A lot of the young people were talking about the future, what it meant to them, because they're the ones who are going to have the future to live in that we created for them.
Right, but I also say the climate change is here, and if you're in your 50s or your 60s or your 70s, I mean, we see climate change, and we've seen it in New York. We saw it with Superstorm Sandy, and we live with it too. And I don't think you can rest easy saying, that's great, I think I might die off before it really gets dire. We live with it.
What has to happen? They're saying one young scientist I ran into, 10 years old, he knew a lot. He said we have 1.5 degrees, and by 4 degrees, it's over. What are we going to do now? Is that true?
That is true. That is the science. And if we keep eating the diet we're eating and manufacture food the way we manufacture it and use fossil fuels and have our military, which is one of the largest producers of and users of fossil fuels and producers of CO2, if we live that lifestyle, that's where we're headed.
What has to be done?
People have to really change the way they live. The American dream of eating meat at all 3 meals and of having a big SUV and driving it around, a lot of that has to change. But I also think that, and we have to consume less, and we have to stop driving in our cars, but we also have to sort of corporately change how our businesses function and how our military functions. Mm-hmm. So we've, got to get off fossil fuels.
What's the role of activism?
The role of activism is to push politicians to act and to pass just laws and to give us what people call climate justice. So that is one thing, is to push politicians. The other is to raise awareness so that people ask questions if they are in, if not climate denial, but, have sort of climate blinders on, to make them ask questions and think about it. And I think it also, demonstrations like this lift up the activists. I mean, climate activism is nothing new. It's been going on for years, but we have to get together and see each other out in the streets and pull together to have effective actions and be unified and let people see that, both visually seeing us on the streets and through conventional media and through social media.
Where does this go next?
The climate movement has to just keep going full tilt through the United Nations Climate Week and international pressure. For Rise and Resist, we're doing a couple of things. We have a demonstration on Monday night, the 23rd, when Trump is going to be in town, where we're going to be gathering at 5:30 at Bryant Park and then marching down to Washington Square Park, and that is called United in Outrage, and it will try to intersectionally bring together a lot of the issues that people are angry about, because the Venn diagram of climate change and, for example, immigration is very big, because a lot of migration is caused by climate change. So Rise and Resist will be doing that on Monday the 23rd. And then also on Wednesday the 25th, we'll be doing a climate emergency action at a Bloomberg climate conference at the Plaza Hotel, and we'll be out protesting at 8 a.m. outside of that summit, where there will be world leaders and the head of Chase Bank and some other institutions that fund corporations and fund projects that are really detrimental to the climate.
And how can get people, is there a website where people can get more information?
There is a Rise and Resist page on Facebook that people can look at, and there's also riseandresist.org, which is our website.
Jaimie Bowers is an activist with Rise and Resist.